Okay, joined by Michael Verney and Philip Lanigan of the Mail. Phil, you had a piece in the Mail on Tuesday. I'm going to bring it up on screen here, and the headline is a return in reach without a vaccine. So, can you give us an idea of what you're thinking at the moment, and what was the premise behind this piece?
Well, just tied into the conversations that are going around across every sport is that how can team sport function right now? And I've heard plenty of replies to the question with, look, it can't, that there can be no team sport without a vaccine. So it was just trying to kind of tease out that idea that can team sport exist without a vaccine? How is it going to find its way, particularly in light of um, we've all heard the stories of how professional sport is trying to find its way. The Premier League has huge contracts and the financial imperatives clearly guiding that. But on the basis that players would be cocooned, and even in our own paper at the weekend, it printed the full document that the Bundesliga put together, which details every little type of way they're going to get back into, right down to the players being cocooned away in a hotel, not being able to touch the lift buttons with their elbows, what they can do on their spare time with their partners, and then obviously right down to the no player escorts, no mascots, no team photographs, no handshakes on the pitch. But it's all detailed out, and this is the way professional sport is thinking, that they're going to find a way to bring back team sport without a vaccine, but maybe behind closed doors. And then just my interest was piqued again when I heard that Serie A, there was a talk of a return. And we've all listened to the nightly updates by Ireland, which have taken in Italy and obviously the awful level of deaths over there due to the virus. And yet here is reports via the Italian government that they're looking at a phased return to sport, and that the top teams will be actually allowed, the players be allowed to train individually first, and then in a couple of weeks, hopefully in groups with a view to be playing behind closed doors. So just looking at that, that's professional sport trying to find its way. And again, we see it in Ireland, with Niall Quinn and what the FAR are trying to do, and clubs looking at that. So where does that leave amateur sport and Gaelic games? And again, is it like the common refrain is, well, no vaccine, no team sport? But to me, like, that carries loads of complications in itself, because there's no guarantee of a vaccine. Even I know everyone's an amateur epidemiologist at the moment, is it? But the idea that a vaccine is going to be produced within the next 6, 12, 18 months, there's no guarantees about that at all. And any bit of research to tell you, for something like this, a vaccine can take up to a decade to be tried and tested. So what then if we say no vaccine, no team sport? Just say there's no vaccine for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So I think society will find a way to function, no more than the economy will find a way to function. So how is that going to happen? So just exploring the idea then that how do we go about team sport, and that leaves the All Ireland Championships and club games. And initially I thought the idea of the clubs going back first, as the GA have kind of campaigned and said, John Horn again on Monday, made a whole lot of sense, because it's smaller crowds, you can implement social distancing. But as a friend said to us there, just on the back of the piece, well, what happens? You take your junior league game, and you have 30 lads, some of them living in town, some of them in college, some of them at home with their parents. So what happens there? This idea that kind of club level sport is restricted, and you're kind of staying within family clusters to a fair extent, doesn't quite hold water fully either. So just tying into that, just how it will go back. And to me, I guess the only way forward is the country is just going to have to kind of get such a handle on the virus that the level of cases is next to zero, and that it's deemed to be an acceptable level of risk, that teams can go back training first and playing. So I don't know what you think, Shay, but it's the short-term prognosis for team sport clearly isn't good, and it isn't as simple as everyone's kind of hoping it will
Yeah, because I mean, anyone who's playing is hoping to get back as soon as possible. Especially if you're a little bit older in age, your time is running out, so you want to take every last
We
chance.
don't have too many years left, Shane.
Well, you played with your son this year. We did a video with you about it, so which is great, and I'm sure you want to keep going and maybe win something with it. But I like when I hear about these team sports returning. Like, it's one thing in a professional environment when maybe you have the money behind you to set up camps or keep players apart, or whatever is required to make this happen. But surely individual sports are the first things that are going to come back, or things like tennis where you're on the opposite side of a court to each other, and fair enough, you'd be handling the same tennis ball, but maybe you even just use a different tennis ball for every point, or you wash your hands after every rally, or whatever it might be. I just thought it was just the idea of professional sport doing contact team sports. I think that's going to be tough. And then the idea in the GA world where everyone has to go home and mix in their own community and their own family, I just don't see it being all that doable. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, John Conlon spoke about it probably a couple of weeks ago now, and he just thought the idea of like GA players cocooning is ridiculous, and I tend to agree. To be fair, like you can't if I'm playing with Offaly, I can't cocoon myself away from my parents and stuff. You have to have a normal life or whatever, and continue on your GA career. You can't risk living with your parents or living with whoever and going back, or living with your grandparents or whoever. There's like the social distancing and everything. We want to come back. Obviously, we want to get sport back whenever is as safe as possible. But like at the end of the day, if I'm playing cornerback in a match, I'm going to be pulling and dragging out my man. I'm going to be in on top of him. I'm going to be, if the ball is there, I'm going to be on the ground on top of him. Do you know what I mean? And that's the way. There's going to be rucks. There's going to be everything. That's the nature of games now. You're going to be in on top of each other. There'd be something very uncomfortable with that if it were to happen in the next couple of months, just because of the dangers associated with it. Just what you were saying there, like I know the World Snooker Championship is going ahead provisionally at the end of July, first 2 weeks in August. They're actually hoping to have crowds there at the moment, Barry Hearn was saying. But something like that, where the referee has gloves and is cleaning the balls as they go along, and there's relative distance kept between the two players. As you said, in tennis now, I don't know if they'd be able to disinfect their hands after every point. Their hands would be fairly red raw. But something like that, like golf, sailing, those type of individual pursuits where it's controllable, like hurling and football, ladies football, camogie, everything, they're not controllable at all. There's a fair element of chaos to them. Something like darts maybe they might be able to start that back as well, where they keep distance. But team sports, it's looking less likely. The longer it goes on, I just find it very hard to see how we're going to have inter-county championships this year. I was chatting to someone this morning, and he's just thinking 3 months ahead. It's a possibility we could have club championships in 3 or 4 months. But the possibility of inter-county championships at this stage, the longer it goes on, the less likely it is. And it seems like John Horn is at peace with the fact that they could play the 2020 championship in 2021, or part of it was started and it could carry over. It seems that that's in their head at the moment, so it should probably start registering with everyone else at the moment as well.
Phil, you wanted to say something there?
Yeah, no, just like listening to Professor Sam McConkey as well, again, on Off the Ball AM this morning, that you mentioned the example in New Zealand. So the key is, like, they're looking at nearly a return to normal society in many ways, and probably including sport. So the idea would be that if a country can kind of get the virus controlled in such a way that it's nearly next to zero in terms of new cases, or that R factor clearly is allows for a return to normal society as such, and that there's almost instant traceable now, the testing kits are nearly reached a stage where it's personalised. The government are talking about 100,000 a week capacity. So if we don't know where this is going to be, but the most optimistic scenario, I guess, is you roll forward 6-8 weeks or even 3 months, and that the virus is effectively in control, and that there are no new cases as such, and that if there are any isolated ones that are immediately picked up, well then clearly why wouldn't sport return, team sport? And there is this a bigger picture of mental and physical health. Like, I 2 young fellas as well, one do leave insert, and the idea of not being able to go to the club and just poke around even themselves, or kick a ball in the 2s and 3s, or they were doing it with their friends before the lockdown. So the economy has to come back. There is a stage where this, there was a brilliant phrase, I read a piece of the weekend by Simon Carswell talking about they call it the hammer and the dance. It's how the ebb and flow of returning to a functioning society financially. And so the hammer is down, everybody's in lockdown. But the next part is the dance of how you get society, the economy back. And sport is obviously bound up in so many people's lives and so important to identity, to mental and physical health, that how we manage this. But the idea that, the reason everybody is looking for a way to make it come back is because of its value in the bigger picture. And that's what the government are obviously trying to sort with the economy, because if the economy goes off a cliff, well, then the damage done by that is huge as well. So there's just this balance the whole time. And to me, this idea that you can't have team sport. Just what about the idea? Like, are we going to get back? If you take a rush hour journey, and if the economy in Dublin reopens, which everyone's hoping for, whether it's within 2 weeks or a month or 6 weeks, like how much more of a risk is there in an outdoor environment where obviously players are spaced away on a pitch, and even your marker is within a certain element of close proximity, but how different or how much more risk is there to a bus journey? If London opens, like the tube, or any commuter town where the tube system is going to have to reopen for the economy to function. So I don't know where it will change quickly about what might be workable and what control it. So I think all these things will kind of factor in the next few weeks and months. But like Michael, I think the GA are absolutely right to play it by ear, and the call to kind of give us certainty when there is none is just not realistic. That nobody knows how the pandemic, or nobody knows how to plot their way through a pandemic, and least of all the GA. And the wait and see approach, to me, is the only way of doing it, because with every week that passes, you're getting more evidence about what works and what doesn't.
It's actually frustrating to watch TV and see, and we'll all take a pop at politicians, and there's plenty to take a pop for, but the amount of times you see pundits or presenters asking them, when can we see a return to this, and like the presenter knows themselves that they don't have an answer, and it's almost just a waste of time and frustrating for the viewer, because they're getting annoyed at the politician, even though how on earth can they possibly give an answer to this? It's very annoying to watch. But Michael, you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, no, just Phil was saying about New Zealand. My brother lives in the South Island, New Zealand. They haven't had any case in the last 5 days, I think. No cases whatsoever. And he just said the traceability, that's like, they've been in lockdown for 5 weeks. They were never in too bad of a situation. I suppose geographical isolation would help as well, but they really nipped it in the bud before it got kind of out of control. And now they're in a position where, they could start phasing sport and different things back in over the next while. I know my brother went for a 7-hour drive yesterday with one of his mates to go looking at cattle. It was just because they were just delighted to get out and do something. But just something that Phil said as well. He mentioned about something to do with zones there, and it immediately came to mind, like the old GA phrase of, hurl your own part of the field. Like, and I was kind of just thinking, wouldn't it be mad if, like, we came back with some sort of a mad game where if you were playing corner back, you had to stay within a 30-yard area and you didn't come in contact with any other player apart from the direct opponent that you were playing against, or something like that. But
and you had to self-isolate with him for 2 weeks after.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything else in the piece, or have we touched on the main part? Obviously, it's in the mail for anyone.
I guess that idea, and the one that kind of it's the common refrain: well, no vaccine, no team sport. But again, I have a brother actually who's I was chatting to, who's a pharmacist, and I was talking to him about the flu vaccine, and he says, like, the flu vaccine, even the elements of that are swapped out and updated all the time, because the flu virus changes all the time. And if you just check this idea that even if we get to a vaccine that supposedly will be the savior of normal society, like, who's to say that the virus isn't going to mutate? Like, you checked last week, Sky News ran a piece that there were already 33 different mutations spotted with COVID-19. So I think, again, unfortunately, this is going to be with us for years and years to come, and that the society will have to figure out a way to try and get back to some sort of normality, which includes team sport and the economy returning, and that unfortunately it could reach a stage where there is an element of kind of risk reward, or just a balance of risk, because unfortunately I don't think the risk of this is going to disappear. Nobody thinks it's going anywhere, and it could be years and years, or it could be there more than the flu vaccines there. It could be there kind of in the background on a semi-permanent basis. So that's why I think sporting organisations are looking. They're not trying to jump the gun as such, but I think there's probably a realism that they're going to have to try and find some way, or at least try and feel their way now to see what works. And to me, again, the key is, as Michael said, in New Zealand, if the cases are suppressed or practically non-existent, well then obviously, why wouldn't sport return, even team sport?
Final word there, Michael?
Just lastly, Shane, yeah, I just think like people are mad to get like sport back on and stuff like that, and whether like it obviously won't return until it's safe, but there's also going to be a question like, will some lads opt out? Will some lads be comfortable with it? I doubt, like, if you put a panel of 30 lads together, that all 30 lads would be comfortable with playing in August, or playing in, if there's no vaccine and there's a risk, or they're living with, as I said, elderly people or anything like that, or even their parents. So, like, I don't know, like, everything has to be so safe, and we have to be in a position where there's not that there's absolutely no worries, but that there's such a little risk to playing something you love. Like, there shouldn't be a risk associated with it, and we shouldn't put players or people at risk, or you shouldn't be putting players in a position where they're going to have to make a decision. So I think the GA are right to be playing it the way they are now. They can't give dates now. They don't know. They don't, like, the health professionals don't know, so they can't give dates. But I just hope that players and officials, managers and things like that, and even people in club grounds and stuff like that, aren't put in a position, an awkward kind of position that they don't want to be in, where they're possibly putting their own health at risk.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. Just worth teasing out just for a second, Phil. Like, even in, like, I know personally, I wouldn't be comfortable going back just yet. I definitely wouldn't. But like, even for you could end up in a situation where you and your son, you're playing the same team in the last year. One of you might go down, and the other, like, you might say, I'm not going down, I can't risk this. But, for example, he might say, well, I'm going anyway. So just by virtue of him deciding to play, you're possibly being put at a risk that you're trying to avoid by not going.
Look, Michael, he's spot on, and in fairness to GA, John Horan was very strong on this on Monday, saying that they're not going to put people at risk. But there is so many different elements, like you say, Shane, that the idea of everyone being comfortable, everyone has different circumstances. I heard John Conlon on recently, wasn't he, saying that he, his own family circumstances, he wouldn't put any of his family members at risk, and he's certain, people that, who are maybe more at risk than others at the moment. So it's, in fairness to GA, they've said that while at the same time exploring every opportunity. So like I say, it is this kind of balance at the moment between trying to figure out a way while all the time keeping conscious of players' health. But as somebody said to us last night, and as Michael alluded to, the idea that if things return, even and it's deemed supposedly safe, like, I guess there's going to be some element of risk nearly in people's minds, and worry that will the teams, like someone said to me last night, that the teams that will, the inter-county teams, say if it returns even behind closed door, that say they go to the kind of pro sport model, and that it's proved that, well, there's probably less risk in a controlled environment like that, but that the teams that will be put on the field will be very different to the ones we saw in the league. That's, they will, certain key figures or certain players just won't want to take part. So that's what, and that's what we're into at the moment. And I don't know what you think. The closed door element as well is a pro sport one, where there are finances and contracts to be named, but that doesn't sit comfortably with so many people in the GA. And I'm not sure what you think, but I'm not sure if that's a better alternative than none, than just waiting till everybody can get back together, because that's kind of, the GA being very clear that the kind of clubs, we're in this together. It's not just catering to the top of the pyramid, the inter-county, that we're in this together. And if you go the closed door route, you're clearly, that's not the case.
Yeah, but like, one of the things is people just want sport back on telly or something to entertain them, because everyone is so chronically bored. But like, there'd be no reason that, if it was safe to do so, and obviously all of this is dictated by HSE guidelines, but if you could have games even locally, and they're broadcast on TV. Lots of club games are brilliant, and maybe the club game needs that little extra boost in a sort of a strange way. That if club games were safe, and if the players were happy to do it, and if everyone was more or less happy to do it, and you could broadcast that on TV, that might be a decent sort of slow launch back, a soft launch back into things, Michael.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. Yeah, it's probably the showcase that the club probably needs, and it's, as I said to you before, like if we're going back into games, so many people need the GA. So many people need the GA. It's like a safe haven, whether it's going down watching an under sevens training or going to watch junior Bs play in the league or whatever. People will feel normal in communities when the GA is back to some semblance of normality. Their lives will become a lot more normal as well. I kind of have different views on the varying views on the behind closed doors thing. In one way, it goes against what the GA is all about. Because if your county is playing and you can't go, then what is it all about, really? But then you're also thinking some games are better than no games at all as well, and will give people, it won't be face-to-face, but it will give people in houses and on Zoom and on Skype and on FaceTime and everything something to talk about in WhatsApp groups, in everything. So that would probably be welcome in that way. But I do see as well that, like, what are those games about? What is an Offaly game about if I can't go to it? What's a Tip game about if you can't go to it? Phil doesn't know whether he's Meath or Dublin, so he's got a couple of different county games that he could be going to. But I'm only messing Phil. But like, what does that mean to people then if they can't go and watch that? That's what the GA is all about. No more than a club game as well. If Borough are playing and I can't go to it, then that takes away some of what the GA and games mean to me. But I can see kind of both arguments on the behind closed doors scene.
Phil, final word to you then. It was your piece.
Yeah, no, again, I wrote a piece recently. I just think closed door wouldn't be the way to go at all. Like, again, for the reasons the GA kind of said, that the clubs are going to come first, that it's, that effectively we're all in this together. But the idea of kind of actually doing more damage to the brand of an All-Ireland Championship, like, do you want, those pictures of the All-Ireland and the GA as we know it, which is meant to be, or is, a community-based organisation, and it's different in many ways to the pro sport model? Do we want that preserved forever on camera in a closed-door setting, a completely soulless setting, which kind of goes against so much of the GA? And to me, you're nearly arguing against your own job, because clearly you'd be hoping that if closed-doors games are on, well, then we have a reason to get back and no more than the pro sport model, the journalists will be there covering the game. But, like, I just think, unfortunately, I think you could actually lose more than you gain in that scenario, and that the best one is that it comes back. And most likely, probably, if they're looking about risk, is you start back with the club in a kind of in a smaller environment where at least the crowds can maintain social distance.
10 minutes after we said final word, Verney, final word.
Just lastly, Shane, I'd do a good bit of work in racing, and racing is struggling with the public opinion now, and it's almost like people have turned on racing as a result of Cheltenham. Whether you say it was right or wrong, Cheltenham going ahead has turned a lot of people maybe that were in the middle ground about racing. It's turned them off racing. Now, it was safe to go ahead according to the British government, and they followed all protocols or whatever, but GA going behind closed doors, whether it's safe or not to do so, you could just lose the public battle somewhat in that respect. There could be reputational damage there almost to the brand of the GA as a result of, as Phil says, ploughing ahead. Imagine hopefully Tip won't win the All-Ireland again, but imagine Shamie Cannon going up the steps of the Hogan or whatever, and he's standing there and there's nobody in front of him. I just looking at the All-Ireland next year, if they just scrap the league in 2021 and play the All-Ireland in the first 3 to 4 months of 2021 and then play another championship later on in the year or something like that, that might work. So they have kind of the reputation to kind of look after there as well.
Okay, lads, thanks very much. We'll chat again soon.
Cheers.